Yo, yo, Chad, you there?
I'm here. What's up? How's it going?
Hey, I'm good, man. Just us today. Chad Barriford is out, but a bunch of interesting stuff to discuss today. And there's a new Q3 THORChain update, pinned tweet on the top of the space here that was just put out. We can go through some of those updates. Did you check that out yet?
I did, yeah. I was looking through it just a little bit ago. But yeah, there's some cool stuff to get through. We'll hold it down without Big Chad B, and I don't know, maybe we can still open it up for questions later and just hang out for a bit, stuff like that.
Yeah. I figured like if anyone wants to come up at any point, just hit the request button and we'll just let people up whenever instead of breaking the flow of the regular conversations. It's just us. If anyone has
Yeah,
like random questions or whatever, I want to talk a bit today about protocol and liquidity because that's kind of the next thing that's coming up with single sided deals and those things are being tested hard right now. So we can go over some of the dynamics of protocol and liquidity and kind of like what happens when protocol owned liquidity does things. Like what are the effects of protocol owned liquidity? So we can go through that. We'll go through the Q3 update. Uh, People want like another thing. Like one of the big things this week, I guess, has been that that FTX bill on crypto regulation and Eric Voorhees' response to that. So I figure we can talk about that a little bit. So yeah, did you catch that?
yeah. Sounds like a good list. Yeah, I looked through. I haven't been going super deep on that stuff, but I like kind of skimmed the SBF thread and skimmed the Voorhees article. Seems like a bit of a shit show. But yeah, definitely we can chat some of that. Basically,
Sweet. All
like,
right.
I mean, my do you want to get into that now or save that?
Yeah. We can start talking about it now, I guess.
Sure, yeah. I mean, the it's just like it's kind of I mean, SBF's take is kind of weird, right? I mean, it just feels like it just feels very non-crypto, like very like the antithesis to a lot of the things that like that make us so excited about the space and sovereignty and freedom and just like uh openness, right? And like this kind of just feels so in the face of that. And I guess it's just his. I mean, I think he's just thinking from the side of FTX, of course, and this is all just my personal like quick take. But I remember hearing something like a couple of years back that always kind of stuck with me with SBF was that he was like, yeah, I just do crypto stuff because like that's where I think the most money is, and I was like, oh, okay, so it's not really about might not necessarily be about like the ideals and the philosophies as much for him. Um, but I thought one point from the Voorhees response that really stuck out to me was how he was saying like here are my points if to SBF. Here are my points if you're considering like the principal side, and if you're considering your self interested side, realize that the people that support you are principled. And I thought that like really kind of was like, damn, that's a big point because I could definitely see like the crypto space kind of rallying against him. Maybe the mainstream crypto space may not care so much, but you know the real crypto space would. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts?
I think the meat of it is like people are unhappy with the way that it kind of leaves DeFi and it all but it all on the positive side it seems like he's open like the people who are writing this bill and God only knows if this thing is going to actually like even ever see the light of day or even get a vote on it, right? But it's just interesting because it's kind of like at the forefront of like in the forefront of the space for crypto regulation. So uh what one interesting thing that Eric talked about was like blacklists and obviously that's like a pretty contentious topic and like enforcing them on the like basically the front end layer of things like being able to voluntarily blacklist someone but not like compulsory saying like oh yes this protocol like blacklisting at the protocol level versus blacklisting at the voluntary front end level. It's like a very very rational and well reasoned argument of like not censoring transactions and addresses at the base protocol level, but if uh, let's say a front end wants to stop a hacked funds from trading through their front end, and they have every right to do so. So it's just very like things that are like more common sense to us that are in this space all day. Like that stuff like that really seems to make sense to me. Uh, but these regulators come from like a completely different background and don't really understand the principles of things. This isn't like, this is a completely a new way of doing things, and especially like in the THORChain realm. Like we kind of do operate in this area of, there's a quote from Eric: "Economy of laws and not men. Neutral, objective foundation for economic arrangement, which future generations will thank us for." And I thought that was a great point by him, because at least what's being, like, obviously we can't speak for everything that's being built in other ecosystems, but the permissionless, censorship resistant platform of THORChain is especially important to the space, and that it is governed of laws of code, and not by any organization or specific individual or group, right? So I thought that was a great point there, into showing that kind of what we all believe in, that it's a DeFi is just a free economy that we can participate in, and it's governed by code and by nodes, not by individuals writing laws. So hopefully that's something they consider when they're thinking about this. Another thing he touched on a bit was the Bank Secrecy Act, which is something that like I've talked to them a little bit about. And yeah, Bank Secrecy Act is kind of interesting, because that's kind of that's what defines what a financial intermediary is, and that's a super legal gray area, especially when it comes to exchanges and things, because that's what requires these KYC, anti-money laundering practices, is this Bank Secrecy Act that requires financial intermediaries to report that information to the relevant government authorities, right? So whether decentralized protocols even fall under the Bank Secrecy Act is a very does that framework make sense? When was that framework made? In the mid 19th century. So it's very, very strange to me. And the other thing is, obviously, whether you so in with the Bank Secrecy Act is whether you require KYC to retail facing front ends. So, like, obviously that would include things like Uniswap, like a Uniswap front end. But there isn't. I don't know. It seems like it's kind of like it's an attempt to compromise, where it's like that the regulators are going to want censorship at some level, so you have to kind of arbitrarily pick which level to censor on, and that was just what fell where it fell in the bill. So I'm not sure whether it's because oh yeah, they're going to need censorship on some level, so it's just going to fall on the front ends to do that. It is kind of where that lied, or kind of what principles led the bill to be like that, how it is. But I thought that was an interesting point, that it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense from the principles, the ground level of the logic there, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like the nuance of front end versus at the blockchain level, because with this Secrecy Act, and I don't know a whole lot about that, but it's who's going to do the reporting? Freaking Ethereum. I don't really get it. Whereas with front end censoring, it's okay, well then you could have, which this is something we've talked about for such a long time. You could have different front end interfaces with their own sets of requirements, their own kind of rules. One interface might try to be as by the book as possible. Everything is completely very much in the regulatory framework, and then there's other interfaces that are a bit off the beaten path. So maybe that's where it heads.
You're gonna say THORSwap has to report suspicious transactions that happen on THORChain, or there's this whole area that's just not covered at all there, which is just, I don't know. It seems like a huge oversight, and not something that a regulator would know that is an issue, because they just don't understand how these systems work.
Right.
So,
they need a lot more education, because you're right. It's okay, so if you're putting the responsibility onto the front end, well, the front end isn't actually you know, doing those transactions, right? It's not actually in control of that. Like you said with THORSwap, it's like, well, these transact like THORSwap is just it's just facilitating that, but these things are happening at the on the blockchain level, and like who's gonna say that THORSwap in this example
Yeah.
is responsible for that stuff that's happening?
And there was another point in Eric's response to this about about OFAC and just actually basically making it illegal to interact with people like citizens of the country of Iran, and how that disenfranchises millions of people. And obviously that's bad for global financial inclusion, which is the just one of the goals of crypto as a whole, I guess. So uh, I thought that was a good point, and like something that like is very like black and white on both of these like two sides of the argument, where it's like one is very like you need to respect OFAC, and then Eric's like no, like we shouldn't respect these laws, which basically say like if you're citizens of certain countries, you should be able to access any financial instruments or products, or interact financially with citizens of other nations, which is just another. Yeah, I mean, that's a whole other thing. I mean, Eric's got his own viewpoint, but I just thought that was it's a good point. It just makes you think a little bit about like are these institutions like the way that we should be going as a species, as as a people.
Right. Like, is it about just like, oh, how do we fit crypto into these laws that have been around for 70 years? Or is it, hey, maybe we should rethink this entire system, which really is step one of crypto in the first place, right? So
Yeah.
why are we spending so much time and effort and all of this on how to adapt it to something that doesn't even make sense in the first place versus rewriting these entire ways of managing economics from the ground up. And yeah, maybe it shouldn't have anything to do with various yeah, should a country be banned from interacting with crypto? Like, no, probably not. I mean, that doesn't really make sense as far as a free and open economic system that we're trying to build.
Yeah, and there's no way to enforce that. Even it's kind of
Yeah.
like a well, I mean that's why crypto was created in the first place, right? To create a system that's completely sovereign and independent of any other any other authority. So we it's not like we're not losing anything here. We still have everything that we built. It's just a we'll see where this policy discussion goes. I just thought that was an interesting thing from this last week. And if anyone has comments or wants to say anything, you can definitely hit the button and come up. Otherwise, we can just move on to other updates.
Yeah, there was one last little point that I
Yeah,
think it was in the Voorhees article, but it was just how he was pointing out that SBF, like SBF and FTX can obviously abide and will abide by whatever law is passed, blah blah blah. They're not gonna become some illegal business or whatever. They can absolutely still follow along with whatever happens, but why take such a stand to push it in this direction, right? Like, why be team regulation and not be team crypto, even if you're running a major exchange that is following the rules? Like, he can be following the rules and fighting for the people, hypothetically, right? Like, kind of like Jesse Powell and Kraken and all of that, and kind of like explaining the reality of what it means to be using a centralized exchange, right? Um, just an alternate approach, and it's interesting to me that he takes the approach of like pushing this regulatory side forward rather than kind of being on team crypto.
so the other part of what you were saying is that like obviously FTX has the resources to have like this AML team, and they have the resources to draft these, but like obviously they have a lot. Everyone knows they have a lot of financial resources and a lot of skin in the game, obviously. But well, let's say these laws passed right now. A lot of teams, especially the smaller teams and the teams that have been around since the very beginning of Bitcoin, they don't have these resources to actually compete against these giant financial institutions. And you know I that it's anti-competitive in that nature, where you need to have a certain amount of funding to start a wallet, right? Like back in the day, anyone can make a wallet. You can still make you can make this wallet or this other DeFi app or whatever you want to make, but then you'd need this entire regulatory team built around it, and that's people, that's resources, that's a lot of money. And a small startup is something something that's in the idea phase right now. It's not going to be able to get out there because these teams just don't have the resources to comply with to that extent.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, it gives themselves a moat, right? Like
Yes.
if they're one of 5 teams that has the staff and the resources to actually comply with all of this stuff, then if they can close the doors on all the scrappy startups and projects and wallets and protocols and dApps and whatever, if they can just like put up a fence and say like, nope, you have to have millions and millions of dollars of legal resources available to even be able to play this game, or you go to jail, then that like it eliminates a lot of competition, like you said. So yeah, I think there's probably a lot of that going on.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about what's happened in Q3 of THORChain. So there was a great article that was released this morning from the THORChain Medium. It's the pinned tweet on the top. Everyone should definitely check it out. It's the THORChain ecosystem update for Q3. So pretty much everything that's happened. Someone's requested to come up. Let me get them up here first. It's Antoine from Cosmos Spaces. Hey, what's up? Hey, you can talk.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon to everyone. I have a question. I know that you use Cosmos SDK to build your platform, your blockchain, and it's good. I really like THORChain, Rune, and everything that you have built with your product. But do you have in mind like enabling someday Tendermint and joining the IBZ?
There's definitely discussions about it. It's unclear like exactly what direction it's to go. There's people who want to import IBC assets, and then there's arguments against exporting Rune. There's arguments to only import from other chains. So it's unclear exactly what direction this will go. I think from my like personal like stance on this is I think the way that this will end up going is so THORChain is this neutral this neutral middleware layer. It's its own sovereign app chain, and I think the way this will end up going is THORChain will eventually implement osmosis and have and utilize IBC through osmosis. So importing IBC assets on osmosis chain rather than doing it directly on THORChain seems like the more secure way of supporting IBC for the entire ecosystem without opening up THORChain to IBC. So I have a feeling that that's the way it's going to go, but there is discussion on whether implementing IBC is the right way to go. There's some good Twitter threads that Chad Barraford has put out. There's one anti-IBC one that Pluto put out. Chad was also anti-IBC, and there's a great pro-IBC case that Orion put out. So there's a lot of different like opinions. It's still being discussed whether like the way to go on that. But I think the best way to be the most inclusive to everyone in the ecosystem and also neutral is implementing IBC through DEX aggregation on osmosis. Seems like it makes the most sense.
Thank you. Yeah, I understand that you have to like keep your sovereignty of your blockchain, and that's understanding. But connecting with the DEX with osmosis, it's something that I enjoy to hear. Because I like THORChain, And if someday I can like bring assets to my Cosmos Station wallet from THORChain, like when you do USDC on ramp with XLR, kind of that. It's nice, you know, because it's not raw BTC there. It's BTC that I can hodl, and it's swapped and traded on THORChain, and other assets. Not just talking about BTC. But thanks for the answer.
Yeah, man. No problem. So yeah, it's being discussed. There's no like finality on that yet, but I think I think it's very low chance we'll ever see Rune ever being exported to other chains. But I think that there's a possibility that one day IBC could open up on THORChain to import assets. But you know, it's just like it's a whole question of just design and whether you know it's right for THORChain. So it's still in consideration, but thanks for the question.
Yeah, real quick, just to add, from my perspective, I feel that 95% of what we actually want is the ability to swap between all these assets, right? We want to be able to go from an IBC asset into native Bitcoin. We want to be able to go from, you know, Doge into random IBC asset, right? Like, to me, unless I'm misunderstanding and I and want to understand like the IBC argument, that is the big piece of the puzzle, and that can be solved through DEX aggregation. Because a lot of the time, just from my perspective, like we see so many people asking and pushing for IBC, and I think we're all big fans of IBC, but like it almost seems like the IBC crowd just wants to hear like, oh, THORChain did IBC, yay! Like what? But what does that mean? Like, what do we actually want here? Do we want Rune on osmosis, meaning export Rune via IBC, because that is possible if it was decided to do that, and or there's bringing IBC assets into THORChain, which might be possible, or you could just do DEX aggregation through Atom or through Osmo integrated into THORChain. And then what you mentioned about like doing it in the Cosmos Station wallet, like, okay, that's a interesting perspective as well. But yeah, I feel like we just need more clarity about like the crowd pushing for IBC. Like what is actually what people want feels to still be vague from my perspective.
So with you just reminded me of one point about this. So think about if THORChain started implementing IBC and they were importing assets, we would have to start brand new liquidity pools for every single asset that is imported into THORChain. So there would need to be a brand new you know, USDC on THORChain via IBC pool, and there would need to be liquidity added and to all of these different pools. So what makes more sense for the actual user, and obviously the user wants to have the best swap rates, and Osmosis already is proven to be it's the leader in liquidity in the IBC, you know, Cosmos ecosystem. So I think the way to really bridge the gap between, you know, swapping from Bitcoin or any THORChain supported asset to any IBC asset is completely doable just with DEX aggregation and just aggregation through osmosis, because that's really what the end user wants, and I think that's the best way to get to the end goal of being able to swap freely between these ecosystems, rather than importing all to THORChain, having to start new liquidity pools, having to grow those very, very deep. It's going to be a lot cleaner to get to the end goal to just import from other chains.
Yeah, totally. I think that XLR could be a key on all these things because it's such a good bridge. But I was just asking this question because I know Rune, I know how THORChain works, and it does really good. I really want to have the chance to avoid sexes as much as I can. And I have another questions relate to that. About if I want to put money on THORChain, there's a way to don't do it like buying Rune on Binance or another sex, or is it a way to like use my credit card with a platform that you have already built or something, or do you have that in mind? I don't know.
Yeah, sure. So THORChain, you can go on any THORChain front end like THORSwap, and if you have a credit card, you can buy Bitcoin with that credit card, and then just use THORSwap or any other front end like Thor Wallet, DeFi Spot, Edge Wallet, you name it, and then you could swap to native Rune right in those apps. So if you have Bitcoin or Ethereum or any supported asset, just go on one of these front ends, and you can swap to Rune if you want to buy Rune.
Or a service that the Atom integration has already kind of given to the IBC world in a sense. I mean, you can already just go from any of your IBC world assets, go to Osmosis, like convert over to Atom, and then once you're in Atom, then now that is a direct link to any native asset supported into THORChain. So if you already have your favorites on ramp in the IBC world, you're like a big fan of that area, you already have a pretty direct path to getting to any native asset integrated into THORChain, including, of course, Rune if you're just looking to buy Rune. And then, yeah, as Cal mentioned, there's some front ends are supporting on ramps. THORSwap's looking into that as well. So, but yeah, I think the beauty of THORChain is like you don't need a THORChain on ramp, right? Because THORChain is just dealing in real native assets. If you just have whatever on ramp to Bitcoin, whatever on ramp to AVAX, whatever IBC asset, then you already have a path outside of centralized exchanges within a couple of clicks to get to whatever asset you're actually trying to get. And I think that's really the goal, is not to have this isolated THORChain world that you need to on ramp into the THORChain world. No, it's bring your own asset. It's get into the crypto world however you want, and then you're connected to everything you want.
Nice, nice. Thank you. And by the way, about the Bitcoin, you could just buy Bitcoin right now, and you can send it even to a chain called Nomic, and it's such a maybe a new chain on Cosmos, and you can send Bitcoin directly to Nomic, and that's another way to make it easier. So there's the interoperability is not just about. I know that you implementing Tendermint is like leaving your sovereignty and your own governance systems and just putting there and in another kind of structure that you have built your own structure, and I respect that. So what the answers that you gave me are the right ones that I was expecting. So I'm really grateful that you have all those features. And I'm such a boomer right now with Ruma. I have a bag, but I have had like I have been busy in this ecosystem, this IBC thing, and need to explore more room because that thing with the credit card, it's such a nice move there, man. Because I respect THORChain, there's a lot of products that try to pretend that they are building something similar as you do, but you are the ones that are building the right shit, and I trust your technology. Thanks for the answers.
Thanks, Ben. It's our profile too. If you do Atom spaces and want to do a collaborative space with THORChain sometime, just holler at Chad Thoreau and we'll get it set up. Thanks for coming.
Will be. Thanks. Yeah.
Sweet. So yeah, let's talk about some of the Q3 updates that have happened. Like there are honestly so many updates that it is like it's crazy how much stuff has actually happened in Q3 of this year. So all right, let's quickly go through some of these updates. First thing is that the Treasury is interested in funding a senior developer, a Golang, a blockchain developer, to start to continue maintaining Midgard, and that's starting at the end of this year. So this quarter they're looking to hire somebody for maintaining of Midgard, which is the data middleware layer that posts endpoints up from Thornode. It does things like shows LP positions, and it shows the APRs of pools and how much assets are in pools, and it's really useful to all the THORChain front ends out there. So if there's anyone that's interested in or knows someone that might be interested in maintaining Midgard full time, then let the Treasury know. There's instructions in the article. It's the pinned tweet on the top. So that is an important thing. So if you know anyone, be sure to let us know. So some of these updates, let's go through. Avalanche THORChain integrated. Gaia done. Order book wiring, order book manager, yield bearing synths, and protocol owned liquidity. Those are all being tested right now. The team is just going through all these features and making sure that they work as described, and making sure, just hammering out any bugs that might exist right now. So that's kind of the biggest things that are upcoming. And yeah, I'll just leave the article. And if anyone wants to read it, just click the link. You can see pretty much all of the major projects that are building on top of THORChain right now, and everything that they built in the past 3 months. And it's pretty incredible to see all this progress. There's dozens and dozens of projects that are building on THORChain. So it's great to see.
Yeah, it is really cool to look at that that like map. Just thinking back a year and a half ago, how sparse that would have been. Probably there would have been 4 things on it. So pretty cool to see the expansion of that. I think we should get into, so you were talking about order books and yield bearing synths again. So let's get into the protocol owned liquidity stuff, because that's kind of like the backbone, right? Before we are going to see yield bearing synths. And you were saying you've kind of been diving deep in that. And
yes, I've been diving deep into protocol and liquidity to understand how it works, so I can explain it to all you guys. So let's get into some of the dynamics of protocol owned liquidity. And so let's start off with why protocol owned liquidity. So everyone knows the synthetic asset yield feature is going to exist, where you can earn BTC on your BTC with no impermanent loss, and other layer 1 gas assets as well. So that is coming, but in order to enable that, it uses synthetic assets, which are on THORChain. They're an asset which represents an underlying asset, like synthetic ETH, that has the same price as ETH, but they're backed by liquidity units in the liquidity pool. So they're backed by 50% Rune and 50% of the like-kind asset. So while they have the same price as the other asset, like ETH, they are backed by 50% Rune and 50% of that asset. So in order to scale this feature up, obviously you can't start issuing since past a certain point. Otherwise, there might become an imbalance, an insolvency on the pools if the liability gets too big because of price movements, right? So protocol owned liquidity is coming into existence in order to take the stress off of the regular LPs, and to start the protocol reserve as a regular LP. So the protocol reserve, which pays out block rewards to the nodes and to liquidity providers, is going to start becoming a regular liquidity provider in the network. There's no special features or anything like that. It's just a regular liquidity provider in the network, and that's to make the pools deeper and to take some of the stress off the regular LPs. So what happens when someone adds Bitcoin to the layer 1 savings pool? So let's go through step by step and just kind of run through what happens when someone says, hey, I have 1 Bitcoin and I want to start earning yield on that Bitcoin. So first, the network checks to make sure that the protocol can take additional liquidity. So it checks the hard cap. There can't be more Rune in the pools than there is locked by the nodes. So that is the first check. And then the network checks the synths haven't exceeded the synth cap. The synthetic asset cap is currently 30% of the pool depth. So you can't mint the market cap of that synthetic asset can't be greater than 30% of the depth of that liquidity pool. And so it'll check that, but the network will still allow user to mint synths beyond the cap. And that is because of protocol owned liquidity and also the slip-based entry fee. So when you go to add that Bitcoin, the Bitcoin is first swapped to Rune. So it does a simple simple swap to Rune, so that Bitcoin is changed to Rune, and then that Rune is used to mint a synthetic Bitcoin. So you then receive an almost equivalent amount of synthetic Bitcoin, obviously minus slip fees, and then that synth BTC is locked up in the module. It's just another address that is owned by the protocol that that holds all of the synth BTC and some Thor address. And then liquidity is added to the Bitcoin savers pool. That's just a accounting check there, and the synthetic asset utilization increases, and then arbitrage bots will then sell Bitcoin and buy Rune. So that's just because when you're adding, when you're taking Bitcoin out of the pool, when you're adding Bitcoin into the pool and then swap to Rune, there's a price imbalance. So the arbitrageurs will sell Bitcoin and buy Rune. So by the protocol, by someone adding a layer 1 Bitcoin into the Bitcoin Savers vault, it puts a buy pressure on Rune. So scenario 2, Saver removes Bitcoin from the pool. So it's basically the same thing, but in reverse. So liquidity is removed from the Bitcoin Savers pool. Synth Bitcoin is removed from the Saver module. The synth BTC is burned for Rune, and then that Rune is swapped for native Bitcoin, and then the Bitcoin is sent to the user. And in doing so, the synth utilization decreases, and arbitrageurs sell Rune and buy BTC. So that puts a sell pressure on Rune and a buy pressure on BTC, and those are the two scenarios when someone is adding to a Savers vault and leaving the Savers vault. And protocol owned liquidity plays in there too, because protocol owned liquidity is the mechanism which allows someone to mint synthetic assets past that 30% cap. So let's go into what happens when protocol decides it needs to add liquidity. So there is there's a Mimir function, which is the target synthetic asset depth, and by setting the target synthetic asset depth, the protocol will always try and maintain a synthetic asset depth around that amount. So let's say the BUSD pool is at 30% right now, which is at the cap, and the target asset depth is 25%. Then if the protocol had liquidity in that pool, it'll start removing liquidity from that liquidity pool until it reaches that target asset depth of 25%, or there's no more position left. So the protocol owned liquidity is constantly adding and removing liquidity from the pool in order to attain that target asset depth. So let's quickly go into what happens when you add liquidity, when the protocol adds liquidity to the BTC Rune pool. Because a lot of people have asked this question about, like, what's the dynamics of what's the buy and sell pressure when the protocol is adding liquidity into the pool and removing liquidity. So let's spell that out for you. So the first thing that happens is the network checks that it can add more Rune. So at this point, the synthetic asset utilization ratio would have been over the target asset ratio. So the protocol says, hey, we need to add liquidity to decrease the synth utilization. So it checks the protocol owned liquidity caps. There's a separate cap that can be set for that, so that way we can scale up protocol owned liquidity instead of starting it real high. So it checks that cap, and it also checks the security hard cap, where there can't be more Rune in the pools than there is bonded to the nodes. So it checks both of those and says, all right, we can add liquidity to the network. Then Rune is asymmetrically added to the Bitcoin pool, and it's a small amount per block that's configurable to how much you want to actually add per block. So you can picture this as just adding a very, very small amount of Rune per block. And the reason it does it every single block and in very small amounts is to decrease the amount of slip that's faced by the protocol. When you're adding very, very small amounts, you face very small amounts of slippage, so you're getting the maximum value for what you're putting in. So this way, the protocol isn't actually getting less value than it's putting in. By putting in a couple of Rune per block, every single block, it's getting much more liquidity units than it would otherwise get, adding a lot at a time, and it's not really gameable in that way. So the protocol will continue to add liquidity until the synth utilization is within range of the target utilization, or if one of the other checks fails. So if the protocol and liquidity cap is reached, or if the security hard cap is reached, then the protocol will stop adding liquidity. And then the last thing that happens is that arbitrage bots, they will end up buying Bitcoin and swapping, creating sell pressure on Rune. So when the protocol adds when the protocol adds Rune to these pools, it creates a sell pressure on Rune, and now the network owns equivalent about half of the value of the Rune they put in that asset. So if they're adding Rune to the Bitcoin pool, then about half of the Rune that's put in, half that value, is now owned by the protocol in that other asset. So through this process, the protocol is owning Bitcoin, owning Ethereum, owning stable coins, and all these other assets. So when the protocol adds liquidity to the network, it creates a small sell pressure on Rune, and the network starts to own external assets to the network. And let's just go through one more scenario where the protocol removes liquidity from the pool. So it's basically the opposite. So the network starts to remove that liquidity, and since it added asymmetrically, it added Rune, it can only withdraw Rune. So it's withdrawing that Rune, very small amount per block, just a couple of Rune every single block until it reaches that target utilization. And when would it remove liquidity from a pool? It would do that once the synthetic asset utilization is too low. So let's say the target synthetic asset utilization is 25% and the pool is at 20%. The protocol can start removing liquidity from that pool in order to get back to that balance. So by removing liquidity, it is removing Rune single-sided from that pool, so it'll continue to do that, and that creates a buy pressure on Rune because arbitrageurs need to sell. In this example, if this is the Bitcoin pool, they need to sell Bitcoin to create, and that creates a buy pressure on Rune. So it's a pretty robust system that this whole protocol-owned liquidity thing is, and it creates pressures in both directions in order to have a balance for the system in order to really underwrite this single-sided savers vault. So I hope that was helpful to people to help visualize the protocol and liquidity and single-sided yield dynamics and kind of what happens to Rune and the other asset buy and sell pressures as things happen with that. Because it's kind of confusing, but this is what's being tested right now. Like the team is going through and just making sure that all these assumptions are true, all these checks are being checked, and that all the accounting works and things like that. So what the team is working on is we're just working on finalizing all this, making sure all of these assumptions are true, everything works correctly, and then sometime soon we're going to put together I'm putting together right now a presentation to just kind of present all of the final design and findings, and hopefully we'll probably take that to Discord soon. So keep an eye out for that. That'll be when the testing is wrapping up and we're about ready to ship, which is things are looking good right now. So I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, very helpful. Thanks for that. I definitely think, some diagrams, maybe some video walkthroughs, stuff like that will definitely be helpful to get our head around all of it, because you did a really good job, but it is very confusing still, and there's a lot of moving pieces and stuff that I think visuals will help to really understand.
Yeah, Greg Gross's Crypto Chris just put out a awesome video on this about a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. Let me see if I can pin it up here real quick, because Chris does the best videos here.
Oh, nice. Yeah, he's the goat for that. I didn't realize he put one out. I missed that. So yeah, I'm sure that everyone should probably watch that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it looks like at the beginning of the month on the third. It just recently was a THORChain one, but he did do a protocol and liquidity one, and a single sided yield. So all right, that should be linked up top. It's at Grassroots Crypto. No, sorry, at Grassroots IO on Twitter. So he's got a great YouTube channel and is very knowledgeable about THORChain. So he put out a really cool video, and we'll have documents out before the release of single sided yield and protocol and liquidity, because these are all essential features that we need to everyone needs to be on the same page about, especially other protocols that are interested in integrating single-sided liquidity. Like, they're going to need to know how this stuff works and know that it's safe and actually works. So teams is working hard grinding on this stuff. So yeah, we're excited for it. Protocol and liquidity. As I'm doing the research, like how this stuff works and how it affects the price dynamics of Rune. I really like it because it's reflexive in both ways. It creates buy pressure on Rune on the way down, and then it creates sell pressure on the way up. But at the same time, it helps scale, just adding liquidity into these pools. So I think POL is a huge plus to the network, and I think that's protocol and liquidity is going to end up being one of the. I think it will end up being one of the best things that actually did happen to this network. Just considering when you consider the whole design of THORChain and everything that it that it achieves in the cross chain space, just thinking about it owning protocol and liquidity, basically THORChain itself owning a Bitcoin position, owning Ethereum position, owning stablecoin positions. That's pretty bullish in my opinion.
Agreed. We got a request here from Muna.
There's some questions in the comments too. Let's go. Well, let me answer some of these questions. Oh, sorry, Muna, what's up?
Hey, Chad, how you doing? Quick question.
How's it going?
I'm good. You were talking about the protocol on liquidity, and I was just wondering. You said it was 30% of the LP pool. Is it 30% of the LP pool apart from the synths? Because when you mint a synth, right, the protocol adds Rune as liquidity, or is it all the liquidity in the LP pool?
Yeah, so the 30%, that's the synthetic asset utilization rate. So that is how much synthetic assets can be minted relative to the depth of the pool. So if there's 100 million in the BTC pool, then 30 million synthetic BTC can be minted on THORChain to get up to that ratio. And if the target, there's a targeted rate that the team will determine what this targeted rate is. The community will determine what this rate is that we're trying to target to keep the LPs safe. When the utilization goes above that, then the protocol will start adding liquidity to the pool, and there's no limit to how much that can grow. So as long as there's demand, the protocol can add liquidity to that pool.
Okay, thanks a lot. I just wanted to confirm that. Good job, guys.
Cool, thanks. So some questions from the chat on the bottom right. How's Haven integration going? I haven't heard much progress on Haven integration. Last I heard on that was probably like a month and a half ago. Right now the focus is definitely on these core features and not so much the chain integrations right now. Now that AVAX is finally released and going through bug squashing on that, so nothing new to report on any of the integration fronts. The focus is definitely on the new chain integration fronts. The focus right now at this very moment is definitely on integrating THORChain into other protocols, so proliferating outwards, and also just getting these big features out so we can also ship those out to our partners too. Because we think that's the way that we should go about growing THORChain at this time. Great sound quality, thanks. Nothing's changed since the last week, but thanks. What's the volume distribution in THORChain? front ends and bots directly connected percent. I will say that no one knows that answer because THORChain doesn't actually track these metrics. All THORChain does is track. THORChain does have a log of every single transaction that's come through it, but there's no way to actually determine the origin of each of these transactions that come through THORChain because it's just a transaction on the blockchain. There's no actual way to determine what the referral mechanism for that transaction was, unless there was a referral fee or an affiliate fee attached to that transaction. So there are some dashboards that you could probably find to see which transactions have affiliate fees on them, and then you could. But obviously, those are pseudonymous as well. So I don't think there's a direct way to check where people are swapping on THORChain. It's all fairly anonymous.
Yeah, so even without the affiliate fees, some interfaces were tacking on a number at the end of the memo and stuff like that, but none of that is required, like you said. So you would never know if there's some interfaces that aren't doing that, or if some transactions are dropped doing that. But I think the general concept is something that people are thinking about, and hopefully we'll see better reporting for that to have a better general idea. There's Thor yield that's a Thor swap related thing, so it doesn't show the entire spread of all interfaces, but there's some metrics. And then like Cal said, there's a lot on Flipside and stuff like that. Like you'll find some reporting.
Yeah, if you're really curious, the best way to find out is to go on Flipside and do a query for all transactions that use an affiliate address and sort out from there. So good luck. Yeah, anything else that we want to talk about today? Anyone else want to come up? Questions about protocol and liquidity or integrations that have happened recently? Eridonis just, I'll plug this real quick. 2 days ago, he was at the Edge Wallet headquarters and had a really, really great presentation at they have meetups fairly regularly in San Diego where their headquarters is, and Eridonis just a true THORChad through and through. So definitely check out this chat. Subscribe to the Nine Realms YouTube if you have not, just to get all of these get all this content as it comes in. We post the THORChain weekly update spaces there, so you can always check those out. And it's a great intro to THORChain space to learn, or refresh the basics on how THORChain works and why people should integrate it into their own products. So this is kind of coming off the tails of THORChain being integrated as a swap provider on Edge Wallet. So, Raven Rebels, hey.
Thank you very much. Raven Rebels here from Sweden, Northern Europe. A very nice space. Thank you for hosting it. And in the very beginning, you had a discussion regarding regulations and cryptos and front ends. And I just want to throw in a little comment there, which is that in this global international world where we have hundreds of countries and markets and such, we of course have different regulations in each and every country. So a well-regulated, how to say, like a DEX or marketplace can be well-regulated in Sweden. It doesn't mean that it follows the regulations in Germany or in Belgium or in India. So I guess we will see lots of different regulations in the future, depending on the market. That was my little comment. Thank you very much for listening.
Yeah, man, great point. Obviously, it's a global industry, which is why why it's so crazy to try and pin down regulations in one sector of the world, because while there will be some regions that want to restrict economic freedom and stifle innovation and punish these small companies who won't be able to afford to comply with these regulations, there will be jurisdictions that come up that are very supportive and open and willing to work with these crypto startups and things like that. So I get there's two sides to every coin, I guess. So there's a bad side to it and a good side to it. I think that as long as these innovations exist, which they're not going anywhere, that there will be legislation. There will be regions that support our freedom here. Thanks for coming up. We got Antoine back up too. Hey.
Hey, bro. I was just thinking about the opportunity and the collaboration you mentioned earlier. It would be nice, we in Cosmos Spaces try to do this thing in English, but in Spanish as well, because it's important for some people to have the chance to understand these kind of protocols and kill this language barrier. So if you have a member in your team, like a dev, like a one that is not just a community member that knows really your tech, it would be beautiful to bring him to a space in Spanish. It would be nice, totally. We have a busier schedule in English, but of course we are considering this collaboration. But wanted to tell you that.
Yeah, actually, there's a fork of THORChain that you might have heard of called Maya Protocol, and I believe the team is. I know for a fact that one of the people on the team, Alux, speaks Spanish fluently. I'm not sure about the rest of the team. I think it is very aligned with South America and Spanish speaking communities. So definitely check out Maya Protocol. They are super knowledgeable on THORChain. I know Alux is in particular. So if you ever want to get someone on speaking Spanish about THORChain and about their own product, Alux from Maya Protocol is a great person to reach out to.
Thank you. That's it, and I'll be listening here. Nice space, by the way.
Sweet, thanks, man. So yeah, definitely subscribe on YouTube if you have not to the Nine Realms YouTube, where we post these spaces. I'm trying to just up the game posting these spaces. We've been posting them on Spotify and wherever you can get your podcast, but now we're also putting them up on YouTube. Been adding closed captions, so you can just scrub through. If you're not one of those people that likes to come in here live, then you can just catch it on YouTube and look at the transcript and then scrub through to exactly the timestamp where you want to go to see what you're interested in. So you don't have to sit through these whole things if you don't want to, but still get the full update on what's going on in the community. So I hope that's helpful to everybody. And if there's other suggestions for these spaces and what you guys would like to see, then for sure let us know, because we just want to create good products for the community, and we love doing these spaces, and we want to make them as good as possible. So any feedback anyone has is always appreciated. But yeah, anyone else want to come up, or anything else, Chad? Otherwise we can wrap up.
Nothing too much comes to mind. Yeah, we can see for a second if anyone wants to request. I mean, on the THORSwap side, we're really doubling down on the partnerships for the API and really trying to make that a huge priority. So that's pretty exciting. Get plugged in as the back end into more apps and wallets and things like that. So that's kind of taking precedent as the number one focus, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, same on the Nine Realm side. The focus is really just on the integrations right now, because I think a lot of us can see that is the future of where THORChain is going to be. This permissionless backend that any app can use to get access to Bitcoin liquidity, to Ethereum liquidity, to AVAX liquidity, Atom liquidity, all the above. It's great rails that we can replace a change now, Changely, change whatever you want, right? So that's where Nine Realms and THORSwap are taking things, and we're glad to work with you guys on that. Big things coming up.
100%. Yeah, a lot of really good conversations happening, and with a lot of different teams at once. So we'll hopefully start to see a lot of announcements and things like that flown out. Another thought I've been having on that, which is interesting, is just like with the bear market, and with volumes down, with prices hurting, stuff like that. Of course, like this integration thing is probably the most promising thing to do in a time like this, right? For a couple of reasons. One being like, hypothetically what's going to 10x the volume on THORChain, like while the entire market is hurting and like no one's around, right? It's like, okay, is it marketing? Is it just like yelling about THORChain and getting more people to try to use it? Probably not. Maybe that works during a bull market where there's thousands of new people being exposed to things every single day. But right now, with partnerships, like you land a couple of big partnerships, and that really does have the potential of getting the volume cranking even in like a rough market time. And then obviously that would just go exponential when the market is ripping again. So yeah, I just think it makes a lot of sense with the timing, especially to really be doubling down on that, building in the bear.
Yeah, and I've never seen more interest in actually implementing THORChain as a service for these other apps to use. Like the interest is actually just like off the charts on like who actually wants to implement THORChain. So things are looking real good on that front.
Indeed.
Sweet guys. All right. Yeah, Friday is at 12 p.m.